is you see me bitch slapping you right here on national airwaves.
The only thing you can bitch slap.
What part of that seems like cozying up? What's the part of that seems like cozying up to the right? I think you're an idiot. I think you love that coup on January 6th. I think you hate our democracy. I think you hate our Constitution. So what part of that is cozying up to the right-wing bitch?
When Andrew Wilson challenged Cenk Uygur on birthright citizenship, something remarkable happened. The mask slipped, revealing the left's empty rhetoric and emotional reasoning. This debate perfectly encapsulates our divided political landscape. I'll break down the strategy every conservative needs when confronting progressive talking points. This isn't just entertainment, it's a blueprint for defending American values.
That you may end what seems to be a very American thing, the very ethos of the country, this birthright citizenship. What do you feel?
It's a very un-American thing. The 14th, or I'm sorry, this was never, by the way, never set up so that people could come in, have a baby, and then anchor themselves to the child. And that's what's been going on. It's been going on for years. We know it's been going on for years. This was designed for things like for immigrants who came in legally. They have children here. Of course, those are United States citizens. Nobody's disputing that. What we're disputing is that you can just come in illegally, have a child on American soil, and then try to anchor yourself to that child. That is not in the spirit of what we're even talking about. Of course, Trump wants to end it. It's bad policy across the board. It's always been bad policy across the board. And I hope the Supreme Court, it gets challenged by the Supreme Court so we could get it in front of them so that they can interpret it correctly, because that's not the way this is supposed to be applied.
Cenk?
Yeah, so first let me address what he said, and then I'll come back to this. So look, guys, what happened on May 30th was nothing but a protest. But if they attack Secret Service guys, then they should be arrested. That's a violent crime. I'm principled on both of those things. And in Portland, when they took over a portion of the city, I was against it. Like, well, that's not a thing. You don't get to take over a portion of a city. I was against it when gangs took over apartment complexes and buildings in Colorado. So if Trump stays with things that the American people are in favor of, getting rid of the violent felons that are undocumented here, that's going to be very popular, whether the left likes it or doesn't like it, right? But when he goes too far and he goes to things like birthright citizenship, then people are going to push back. And that's when it gets interesting. Is Trump going to double down and go, no, I'm going to, go to demagogue on this and get you people to hate foreigners coming in, et cetera, and I don't care what the Constitution says, and we're going to change the way America is, and you're no longer an American if you're born here. We're going to judge you based on, where you're from, et cetera. That'll be very unpopular. Does he dig in, or does he, as he does sometimes, go, you know what, I gave it a shot, didn't work, and retract? I hope that that's the direction he goes, because this whole, look, brother, if you have a problem with a part of the Constitution, you need to go through the right process. You need to go and do an amendment. Like, I want to do an amendment to get money out of politics. But when Biden was in office, I didn't think he should just come in and go, forget what the Supreme Court said. Forget what the Constitution said. Let's go nuts and do whatever the hell we want. That's not how it works.
Andrew Wilson versus Cenk Uygur on Piers Morgan Uncensored. You haven't watched it yet, buckle up. This isn't just another cable news shouting match. This is a masterclass in exposing the progressive left's entire playbook. In just a few minutes of heated debate, we witnessed exactly why conservatives are winning the battle of ideas in America today. What makes this exchange so powerful isn't just the fireworks, though there were plenty. It's that Andrew Wilson methodically exposed everything that's broken in the progressive movement. Their situational ethics, their abandonment of constitutional principles, and their immediate resort to profanity and subscriber counts when substantive arguments fail.
Well, gee, I never thought about that. I didn't know that we were supposed to go through a process of law for these things, which is exactly what Trump is doing via his executive order, which then hopefully will get it in front of the Supreme Court, which looks like that's what the plan is.
That's part of the legal process.
By the way, just so you know, the interpretation of this, that's what we're really talking about, is the interpretation. Ultimately here, it is not, and you need to agree with me on this, it is not in the spirit that you can come in and have a child here and anchor yourself to the child specifically so that you have some pathway or motivation to citizenship. You say it's not a part of the legal process. Yes, these challenges, getting in front of the Supreme Court, getting in front of various courts, is part of the process. It's been done this way time and time and time again. Also, I reject categorically what you said, just lied to the audience. You called Trump bunker boy, right? He was going down to the bunker during the protest to inspect it. Ha, 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 right? You didn't care at all.
Yeah.
You weren't denouncing political violence. You weren't denouncing these people getting beat up. You didn't care when the violence is on your side like a typical Democrat. You don't care at all, Cenk. You don't care. And you've never cared. The only reason you care now is because you want to kiss.
And I condemn it every time people do violence. Literally
okay,
every time.
I'll say snake. But the thing is, Snake, is that you're just trying to kiss the right wing's ass now to get back in with them because the left has categorically rejected you, and that's what's actually happening.
Cenk, is that what's happening?
All right, you amuse me. Yeah, this guy amuses me. So, like, you think calling me Snake is going to somehow win you the debate? Good luck with that childish.
I already won the debate.
Way of going. Oh, you did because you said it. Okay, that, by the way, another great debating tactic. Just saying you won. And second of all, we have 27 million. How many times do I have to say this? 27 million subscribers, 30 billion lifetime views. You're a pimple on my ass. I literally don't even know who you are. So you come in here talking about audience? And you're a snake. Okay, you're a turtle. You're a scorpion. Audience. Whatever. Do I win now?
I didn't say anything about audience. What are you talking about?
Them. Let's break this down. Because there's a lesson here for every conservative in America who wants to understand how to win these arguments. At the heart of this debate was birthright citizenship, a fundamental constitutional question that deserves serious, thoughtful analysis. Andrew Wilson articulated what many Americans understand intuitively. The 14th Amendment was never designed as a magnet for illegal immigration. Wilson made the crucial distinction that legal immigrants who have children here absolutely have American citizens as children. That's not in dispute. What's being challenged is the idea that someone can cross the border illegally, have a child on American soil, and use that child as an anchor to establish themselves in our country. This is a reasonable measured position that the majority of Americans support. Is not about hating immigrants. It's about respecting the rule of law and the original intent of our Constitution. And how did Cenk respond? Not with a substantive constitutional argument, not with a reasoned defense of his position. Instead, he immediately pivoted to January 6th and portrayed President Trump as some kind of constitutional vandal tearing up our founding documents, which is rich coming from a man whose party spent 4 years calling Trump illegitimate, and who consistently supports executive overreach when it aligns with progressive goals. What's truly remarkable is that Wilson was advocating for the proper legal process, challenging interpretations through the courts, and ultimately seeking Supreme Court review. That's how our system is designed to work. Meanwhile, Cenk's side supports packing the Supreme Court when they don't like his decisions. They support executive orders that clearly exceed presidential authority. They support the administrative state making law without congressional approval. Yet they have the audacity to lecture conservatives about constitutional process. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. Perhaps the most revealing moment came when Wilson called out Cenk's selective outrage about political violence. This is a pattern we've seen repeatedly from the progressive left. Remember the summer of 2020? Over 500 riots across America. Dozens of people killed. Billions in property damage. Entire city blocks occupied by self-proclaimed revolutionaries. Federal buildings attacked night after night. Police officers assaulted. And what was the response from outlets like the Young Turks? At best, mild concern. At worst, active cheerleading. Wilson nailed it when he pointed out that Cenk mocked President Trump as bunker boy when violent protesters threatened the White House. Where was Cenk's concern for political violence then? Where was his defense of our institutions when left-wing activists were attacking federal property? The selective outrage is revealing. When political violence comes from the left, it's mostly peaceful protest. When it comes from the right, it's an existential threat to democracy. This double standard has alienated millions of Americans who can plainly see the dishonesty, and Cenk's response to being called out. Personal attacks and profanity. When he couldn't defend his inconsistent positions, he resorted to cursing on live television. This is what happens when progressive talking points collide with reality.
You did. You just said, oh, yeah, the left wing's audience has got a problem with him. I know the left wing better than he does. Oh, yeah,
you're trying to cozy up with right-wingers. What were you doing at TPUSA, Cenk? trying to cozy in with right-wingers like Charlie Kirk,
Cenk.
kissing their ass. You're literally kissing up to them because you want in good, because the left is rejecting center-left policies now. That's what's happening.
Hey, brother,
they either want to go far left or far right.
Okay, listen, brother. As you see me bitch slapping you right here on national airwaves.
The only thing you can bitch slap.
What part of that seems like cozying up? What's the part of that seems like cozying up to the right? I think you're an idiot. I think you love that coup on January 6th. I think you hate our democracy. I think you hate our Constitution. So what part of that is cozying up to the right wing? Bitch?
I hate snakes like you who try to get in as good as you can with a weak right like Charlie Kirk when you have weaponized political violence yourself.
Oh, Charlie Kirk is weak right and you're strong right.
At the same time, at the same time, you say, "Wait a second! Oh, I can't believe the J6ers coup d'etat. You didn't give a damn. You've never given a damn. We have your words on record. You flip-flopped. You're the biggest flip-flopper on the left. You're known for it. People make fun of you for it because you move positions. You and Anna Kasparian both move positions like a tube of toothpaste.
Oh, Trump! I love Trump! Oh, I love Trump so much.
And all you care about is Trump derangement syndrome. All you have is Trump derangement syndrome.
What's particularly fascinating about this exchange is how it reveals the identity crisis happening on the left. Andrew Wilson touched a nerve when he suggested that Cenk is trying to moderate his positions because the far left is rejecting him. And look at Cenk's reaction. He completely lost it. Why? Because there's truth there that he doesn't want to confront. The progressive movement is dealing with a serious internal conflict. After years of pushing increasingly radical positions, they've discovered that ordinary Americans, including many traditional Democratic voters, are simply not on board. We saw this in the 2024 election results. We see it in polling on issues from immigration to gender ideology to crime. So figures like Cenk are in a bind. The base they've cultivated demands ever more radical positions, but those positions are political poison with the broader American public. They're trapped between their radical base and political reality. What's a progressive to do? Some, like Cenk, attempt to moderate selectively. They try to sound more reasonable on certain issues, while maintaining their progressive credentials on others. But this creates the exact kind of inconsistency that Andrew Wilson so effectively exposed. You can't claim to revere the Constitution while supporting its selective enforcement. You can't claim to oppose political violence while excusing it when your side does it. You can't claim to champion free speech while labeling disagreement as hate speech. These contradictions are catching up with the progressive movement, and that's exactly why Cenk reacted with such hostility. Wilson's critique hit too close to home. One of the most revealing moments in this exchange was when Cenk resorted to bragging about his subscriber numbers. 27 million subscribers, 30 billion lifetime views. He boasted, while claiming not to know who Andrew Wilson even is. This response speaks volumes about how the progressive media ecosystem operates. When substantive arguments fail, fall back on credentials or popularity. When your positions are exposed as inconsistent, claim your opponent is beneath your notice. When you're losing on the merits, change the subject. But here's what Cenk doesn't understand. Americans are tired of being talked down to by media elites who think subscriber counts make them right. We've seen this arrogance from legacy media for decades, and it's precisely why alternative voices like ours continue to grow. The truth is that Cenk knows exactly who Andrew Wilson is. He came prepared to debate him, but when that debate wasn't going his way, he resorted to the elitist tactic of pretending his opponent is irrelevant, right before cursing him out on international television. This reveals something profound about the progressive mindset. They believe popularity confers correctness. They believe that platform size gives their ideas merit. They believe consensus determines truth. Conservatives understand that some truths remain true even when they're unpopular. The Constitution's meaning doesn't change based on subscriber counts. Facts don't care about your view statistics. And Americans increasingly see through this appeal to popularity. Another fascinating aspect of this exchange was Cenk's attempt to rewrite his own history regarding President Trump. For years, Cenk pushed every conspiracy theory imaginable about Trump, from Russian collusion to claims that Trump would refuse to leave office after losing an election. When Wilson called him out on this, Cenk's response was telling. He simply declared those things are true without evidence or argument. This is gaslighting in its purest form, telling Americans not to believe what they've seen with their own eyes. The Russia collusion narrative collapsed completely. The claim that Trump would refuse to leave office was proven false when he peacefully transferred power to President Biden in 2021. Yet rather than acknowledge these errors, Cenk simply asserts their truth and moves on. This is a common tactic. In progressive media, make outrageous claims, move on when they're disproven, never acknowledge error, and count on your audience having short memories. But Americans are smarter than that. They remember the years of unfounded accusations. They remember the constant predictions of doom that never materialized, and they're increasingly skeptical of media figures who refuse to acknowledge when they've been wrong. This is why trust in mainstream media is at an all-time low, and why Americans are seeking out alternative voices who aren't afraid to admit mistakes and adjust their thinking when facts change.
On display.
But wait a minute. How can you say? Wait, hold on. I gotta say one thing. Piers, I gotta say one thing. How could I have? How can you say that I'm cozying up to the right and say I have Trump derangement syndrome?
All right.
Make up your mind. You're a very poor thinker.
We watched the entirety of his entire first term. You were Russia, Russia, Russia. He's a colluder. He's evil. He's this and that. And he flip-flopped on that position the second it was politically expedient.
Okay. Let me try and...
None of those things are true.
Let me try and move on.
So what are the lessons we should take from this remarkable exchange? First, constitutional principles matter. When conservatives ground their arguments in the actual text and original intent of our founding documents, we win these debates. Americans instinctively understand that the Constitution isn't a living document that changes meaning based on progressive whims. Second, consistency matters. The American people can spot hypocrisy a mile away. When progressives condemn behavior from conservatives that they excuse or celebrate from their own side, it undermines their entire moral authority. Third, substance beats spectacle. Notice how Andrew Wilson stayed focused on actual policy arguments, while Cenk resorted to profanity and subscriber counts. This contrast wasn't lost on viewers, and it's why conservative arguments are gaining traction across America. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, these public debates matter. Every time a thoughtful conservative like Andrew Wilson steps into these arenas and exposes the inconsistencies and hypocrisies of the progressive movement, minds are changed. Not always the mind of their direct opponent. Cenk clearly wasn't persuaded, but the minds of thousands watching who see which side has the better arguments. That's why we can't shy away from these confrontations. That's why we need more conservatives willing to step into hostile territory and make our case with confidence and clarity. The American people are listening, they're watching, and increasingly they're seeing through the emotional appeals and shallow thinking of progressive figureheads like Cenk Uygur. That's all for today's Black Coffee. Remember to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to see it. Until next time, stay strong, stay informed, and keep fighting for the principles that make America exceptional.